Okay, so I want to go through the sugya. I want to start a little bit in the beginning just to build up and make it clear 100%, even though it sounds like I don't know how much I have to add after everything that the Olam have been learning and going through Kenai Nahor. It's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I know that this is a very, very controversial sugya, as you mentioned. It's a sugya that I generally don't like to speak about, even though it's part of Torah and people have to know it, but people often can't cope with it because it's difficult. It's one of the sensitive halachas. It's one of those halachas that affects people's lives that automatically, don't tell me about that one, right? So one younger man came over to me after I gave a shir in a Hasidic Beis Medrash, and he says to me, "Oh no, I can't come home and tell my wife this one." I said, "Why not?" Well, she'll make me sleep in the bath. There's no way that I can come home and tell her all these shilas and backwards and forwards, and there's got to be a way out and everything. Sometimes you don't always have to hear that which we want to hear. We have to hear what the Gedolim have to say. And I always say, when you go through the sugi yourself, sometimes you come up with a certain clarity that you didn't have before, which definitely makes it easier on both spectrums, to be mekel or to be machmir. So I want to try to go through a little bit of the sugya just for a few minutes, and then we'll try to get through some of the Metzias, which I did spend a long time being Mavar the Metzias myself. And not only that, some of the eitzes that a person can do, and of course, different shitas and different poskim be'ez Hashem, which again, a lot of it sounds like it's chazara based on what you have heard or what you will be hearing. V'choli v'choli. So I want to start like this. Number one, schitas begodim generally is a shaila that the Rishonim discussed. It's a Rabbeinu Tam brought down in the Tosas and Ksubach Dachbov, that whether or not it's shaykh to two malachas. In other words, schitas begodim, when you take a beged and you squeeze it, and the reason why I'm doing this is not just to go through the Rishonim, but it's to build, and many of this we'll go back on to try and see how we can use this to practicality. And I always like this halacha because it's a halacha that shows us that at the end of the day, the Torah talks to everything, every mitzias that comes out, every situation that is in the mitzias of Klal Yisrael throughout history. We always go back to Chazal, we go back to the Torah to see how it answers all of our shaylas. So again, Rabbeinu Tam in Tosfos and Ksubas Tavov tells us that the malach of schitas begodim is really shaykh to two malachas. It can either be dosh or it could be melaban. How do we know which one is which and which one a person is over on? The real nafkamina obviously is not unfortunate nafkamina right now. It's a nafkamina when bisman beis hamikdash legabe the hasra. When you want to give someone warning for what he's doing, Tosfos holds, the Shita said that you have to give him the warning of the av malacha that he did. So in order to know what to be warning on, we have to know which malacha it is. Tosfos comes along to tell us, very simple, and he says that when you need the liquid that's coming out, when you're interested in that liquid that's coming out, then that is the malacha of dosh. Because very simply, the malacha that you're all learning right now, dosh, as you learn, for example, in schitas peris, is when you squeeze something because you're interested in the juice. So the moment you're interested in the juice means that it's going to be a malacha of dosh. Whereas, if the malacha is done in a way that I don't need the liquid, I'm getting rid of the liquid, I'm not interested in the liquid. Like, for example, when I have a wet beged and I want to wear it or I want to clean it, and I soak it in liquid and then I squeeze it out. So that squeezing is the same maisa of schita begodim, but that schita begodim is a schita of malaban because I'm not interested in the liquid. So number one, the first thing we've learned from Rabbeinu Tam in Tosas and Ksubas Tazvov is that the malacha of dosh in regards to schitas begodim is defined as a situation when I need the liquid. That is a very important thing. There's a Rosh. The Rosh says like this in Klal Chov Beis Sikotten Zayin. He brings down like this. He says, how come schitas begodim is a chiyuv mishum dosh? But kvoshim and shlokos, if a person has vegetables that were cooked or marinated in liquid and they've absorbed the liquid from somewhere else, why is that potter? And the Rosh answers with a tremendous yesod. The Rosh says that kvoshim and shlokos is not the derech to squeeze. Nobody squeezes them. True, you have a baby that wants a carrot and the carrot is too liquidy, so you'll squeeze the chicken soup out of the carrot to give to the baby. All right. So that's why it's potter. It's not the derech. But so it's like tutim v'remoinim. The gather of tutim v'remoinim is not seisim v'anovim. It's not a deraisa. It's a drabonim. And therefore, it's only this Rabbanan. Masha'en Kain, says the Rosh, that if you have a liquid that is absorbed in a beged, it is the derech to squeeze it out. And therefore, it's got a choshev mashka, the Rosh calls it. It's got a din of mashka. It's got a din of liquid coming out. And it goes back to the sugya of schitas peris, which means that according to the Rosh, schitas begodim, which is a normal thing to squeeze, is like squeezing zeisim va'anovim, which is the da'oraisa, as the Gemara very clearly tells us is the case. Not only that, we can also add another yesod as well. And again, this all builds up to the sugya, and that's the yesod of bittul, that by kvashim and shalakos, it becomes a chelik of the actual food. People eat it that way. Therefore, when you squeeze it, you just almost took away the food from it. Good, it's in liquid form. That's why it's a d'rabbanan. Masha'en came by schitas begodim, the liquid does not belong in the beged. So if it doesn't belong in the beged, it's not bottled to the beged, it retains its status of a mashke. Mimela, when you squeeze it out, you squeeze down a mashke. Okay, so that's what it is. That's the general yesod over here. There's a Rambam. I'm sure you've gone through the Rambam in Perek Tes and Hilchos Shabbos Halacha Yud Aleph, that he tells us, the Rambam, that if a person squeezes a beged, says the Rambam, it's interesting, he doesn't mention, he says it's kibus, it's washing, and he doesn't mention schita by dosh at all in Perek Ches, which is interesting. They learn from here that the Rambam learns that there's no problem of mafarik, which is dosh, by schitas begodim. Agav, there's a Rambam this way, and that's how he puts it also. If you look in Perek Chabeis, Halacha Tezvav, that's what the Rambam puts over there. What's the reason that the Rambam does this? So the Meiri in Shabbos Ayin Gimel Amud Beis wants to say, because Ein Disha Ela B'Gedulei Karka, which we will have to explain and talk about, La Halacha L'Maisa, the Minchas Chinuch also brings this down as well. Or he holds like Rashi, which is also Gavaldik Yesod, which is Be'etzim HaMagid Mishnah as well, and that is that since the beged didn't grow with the liquid only came afterwards, and therefore it's not schita from dosh, and therefore has no shaykhs whatsoever. Tosfos famously, we just mentioned it, Rabbeinu Tam in Shabbos Kuf Mem Hey also holds that dosh and mafarik is definitely shy by schitas begodim, and as I paskin the Ran, the Magid Mishnah also says the Rashba holds this way, and they hold it's like Zeisim Vanovim, as we explained. One last thing. Why is there no boire by schitas begodim? Now, Tilla David asked this question. My Rebbe Rabbi Zul Orbach always used to say that his Shver Rabbi Yashiv, whenever he heard the name Tilla David, he went, "Ooh, that was the Tilla David's kasha." Tilla David was very, very mukubal by Rabbi Yashiv Zatzal, and the Tilla David in Shin Chav Sikot Yud Zayin brings down this question: why is there no boire by schitas begodim? You are separating the liquid from the beged. So he says, and he brings the famous Mogen Avram, that by schitas peres, who asks this question: why, when you squeeze a lemon or an orange, is it also not boire? And the answer is it's min echad. So why can't you say the same thing by schitas begodim? And he brings down a prima godim and akdoma to Shinchav that says only for miyad, and the Tilla David wants to say, and he brings all sorts of rise, and he says lemaisa. Interestingly enough, the Tilla David actually wants to say it is boire. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman brings this in Shuva and Mincha Shlomo 7 Yud Aleph, and he says you cannot consider it to be boire, and this is Ramamish Rabbi Shlomo Zalman l'shitase. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman said this by a bunch of things. This is another one of them, and he said boire is beloshem b'nei odom. Nobody calls this separating; they call it cleaning. And therefore, that's why he said, when you take a plate and you wash it, that's not boire. You're separating the dirt from the plate. It's not boire. Nobody looks at it that, and therefore there is no problem. Okay, so that is the sugya when it comes to schitas begodim. With one last thing that we have to learn, which I heard that you didn't mention 100% because you didn't have time to go into it, so maybe I'll just take a minute to go into it, is Sif Yud Zayin and Shulchan Aruch and Shem Chov. Sif Yud Zayin talks about this interesting yesod of a svoig. And it's important to remember it because in Sif Yud Zayin is our sugya. Because when we get to Sif, when we get to all the sugyas that we talk about, legabe baby wipes, we have to talk about this shaila. And Sif Yud Zayin talks about the svoig. Now there are two perushim to what this sponge, svoig is pashtas, the sponge. What is the sponge is? So the Rambam in Perush Mishnayos says that it's a very absorbent material. The Aruch, famously the Ramah, says that it covers the eyelid of a fish. Now the Rambam says you're not allowed to use a sponge unless there's a beis achiza. What's the reason? if there's a beis achiza, in English, if there's a handle, then all of a sudden it's fine because there's no schita. Says the Ravid ala Rambam, what is the Rambam talking about? What, because you have a handle, there's no schita? What does it make sense? You have a sponge attached to a handle, all of a sudden it's okay? Says the Ravid, pshat, why the Rambam says there's no problem, is because it's like a tzluchis molei mayim, which means when you take a cup and you spill out water, so there's always going to be a little bit of water that's left at the bottom over there. When you pour it out, what are you doing already? Yes, it's for sure going to come out, but it's basically pouring out a cup of water. So in other words, the Ravid wants to learn, the pshat over here is that yes, we know it's going to come out with a handle, but it's like pouring it out of a cup. It's a normal thing to do. Says the Chazon Ish in Simon and Vav, Shabbos Sikot Nei, because the sponge is osoi. It says the Chazon Ish osoi lekach, to accept water and to squeeze it out. But since there's a handle, it doesn't become bottled to it. And therefore, he wants to say that's why it's different to a regular sponge that does not have a handle, because it's almost like it's going to come out in that case. Okay, now, that being said, we have to go back now for a moment to Shulchan Aruch. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch, because I always say baby wipes are mufurish in Shulchan Aruch. There's not much to talk about, but again, we have to talk about the mitzias and the latest types of baby wipes that they have and what the nafkamina is. So the Shulchan Aruch, as you've learned in Sifyat Ches, talks about a chovis, shepoku, shepkak shel pishton, listom nekev, shebedofna shemoitzim ba'yayin. So there was a barrel, and this barrel had a spout, that was the faucet, and the faucet was loose. So to tighten it, to make sure that the faucet stayed very, very well onto it, what did they do? They took, basically, for all, make it clear, they took a type of cloth and they wrapped it around the faucet and they stuck it in the side of the barrel. So now you've got a faucet that's being held in by a cloth, right? Many plumbers do this as well. If they're dealing with pipes, and to make it even more watertight, is they'll take like a very thin string and wrap it a few times around to make sure that it absorbs and keeps everything in. So that's what they did. Says the Shulchan Aruch, even though it was absolutely impossible that schita would not happen, why do I not want to clean underneath it? It's a psik reisha, which is continues a muta. It's a psik reisha. It's for sure going to happen, but it's lo nichale. How do I know it's lo nichale? Because I don't have a plate underneath it. That's one shita. Yesh mishamatim. And then it says, you've seen this. The avagad lo nichale. It's not nichale, but lamaisa gave it the psik reisha. It's for sure going to happen. It's also v'ha'olam noigin het to bedava. By the way, the Be'alach and Simon Veshon Gimel says that whenever the Shulchan Aruch says this, it's a b'diavad. It's not a lechatchila. It's not the pshat that the oilim were noig and great. They were noig like the makilim. Pshat is they were noig, but it's a b'diavad. That's what the Be'alach says in Veshon Gimel. Like the machoikim between Rabbanan and Chananya in the shaila of Chazorah and Atmona, which we're not going into now. The yesh l'lam nevskos. Okay, what's the skos? The cave and Shabbat Zarukah. Since it's a very long spout, nobody's touching the mokoim that's happening skita. Nobody's touching the cloth, the place where the skita is happening. It's muta. It's like the svoig sheyesh la beis achiza, but if he's in tanizu chazaka, it's not great. V'yesh la gam gimba, toiv la'nigam shlo yekli tachas ha'chovis v'shash poking a naked, and then you'll be okay. So here we have in Shulchan Aruch a very simple mitzias. And the simple mitzias is that you've got a situation of schitas begodim. Nobody's arguing. There's for sure schitas begodim happening in the Shulchan Aruch. And it's lo nichale. It's lo nichale. Why? Because I've got no plate underneath it. I'm not interested in any of the liquid that's coming out and the wine that's coming out from the barrel. I have no interest in that. But that's not great. I can't really do that. So I also have a handle, and I also don't have a clean underneath it, and I use all of these, and on that the Shulchan Aruch seems to say, no. So what do you have? You have a Metzias in Shulchan Aruch, where you have Schitas Begodim going on. The Shulchan Aruch says, really, you shouldn't do it, but since you've got number one, it's lo nichale, you don't really want it to happen, and the fact that you're not touching the mokim, that the skita is happening, the hainu, the sponge, or the cloth, therefore, you can be makel because there's a shita saravid of a svoig sheyesh lo beis achiza, and therefore you will be okay. Okay, good. Let's take this practically. Let's go back now. Let's talk about the sugya at hand. And I know it's a controversial one. There are many gedolim that say azoi, many gedolim that say azoi, but I want to try as much as I can to make it clear, and then Be'ez Hashem, we'll try to make a little bit of a summary as well. We have a situation of a baby wipe. Now, a baby wipe is definitely some kind of a beged. There's definitely something, we'll talk about different svaras about what I just heard being mentioned, about the absorbed, about the liquid being resting on the top. Maybe we'll talk about that. But even without that, in a regular case, I have a baby wipe, I have a cloth that has absorbed the liquid inside it. Okay, I am touching the item itself, I'm touching the actual baby wipe, and I am pushing it down on the baby or on a surface or whatever it may be, a table, doesn't make a difference, and the liquid is coming out. So it's for sure happening. So it's called schitas begodim. I've got a psik reisha. Nobody can argue that it might not happen. Nobody's going to say it's a suffix. It's for sure going to happen. Again, we'll talk about what happens to the liquid resting on the top. But at the moment, we'll talk about in a regular situation with a regular baby wipe. It's for sure going to happen. It's for sure coming out. And you cannot say lo yichale, which we'll talk about. And therefore, according to that, I have a regular situation of schitas begodim, where I'm interested in the liquid coming out because I use the liquid in order to clean the baby or to clean the table or whatever it may be. And therefore, that's the reason why it's problematic. Now, just to give you a little bit of a summary of some of the gedolim, of the tshuvas that I saw myself from the gedolei poskim that held if it's mutter or asa. So I'm not going to give you all my makomis, but that we have a minchas Yitzchak, a Dain Weiss, the Debet Sinarov, the Bemoisha, Dain Fisher in Evan Yisrael, Rav Elyashiv, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Scheinberg, the Emek Tshuva, Rav Nissen Karelet, the Balzadain Shevet HaKahosi, the Haut Tzvi, Rav Falken Machselio, the Megillah Sefer, the Nishma Shabbos, the Orchos Shabbos, Rav Moshe Shaul Klein, and many others who hold that using them is Issa Mamish. I have a tshuva actually over here written by Rav Scheinberg, Zatzal, my Rosh Yeshiva, in the year of Tovshin Nun Ches, Erev Shabbos Kodesh Yud Gimel Elul, Tovshin Nun Ches, and he talks about, he writes a tshuva specifically, and he writes in parentheses baby wipes, and he writes that they're absolutely using them as an Issa Da'oraisa, and therefore you have to figure out Eitzah, which brings the Eitzah, which maybe we'll talk about. Now, one of the issues, I want to go through some of the tiners that people have, but before we do that, Rav Moshe, you mentioned, famous Truvan Rav Moshe, and I actually am very happy with the way it was mentioned, because I've heard people mention Rav Moshe, and people mention Rav Moshe many times. Rav Moshe's Makel, Rav Moshe's Makel. Okay, look at the Truva inside, you know what's going on. Rav Moshe, as you said, was never talking specifically about our exact brands of baby wipes. He was talking about, as it says, Nia was paper. I don't know, I never spoke to his children about it, but they do say, again, I don't know because I never spoke personally, but they do say, and I'm sure in America this can easily be checked out, that Reb Ruvain said that that his father was talking about a hand paper that they use like hand towels. The thick paper, that paper doesn't absorb and therefore doesn't give out, which is true, because if you take one of those papers and you whip a spill, it's not really going to be very absorbent. And if it is, it's not going to exactly be very soft in order to give it out. So again, I don't want to speak about something which I don't know 100%, but they say from Reb Ruvain Feinstein that he had said that his father was talking about hard paper and whatever it is. Reb Shlomo Zalman, again, as you mentioned, was Makel. His son, Reb Israel, told me, and I spoke this over many times with him, that Reb Israel told me that his father was absolutely machmeh, especially with the ones that we have nowadays. We have to understand as well how they're made. And that's a very important issue. So before we get to the tiners of what people have, and actually I found, I wasn't able to locate it this time, but when I originally got in halachas, there was an entire sefer called baby wipes. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a Hebrew sefer, Lashon HaKodesh. It was the entire sefer was dedicated to baby wipes. And he went through the Lomdas, and then he went through all the Gedolei Poskim, and he went through every svara that people say, knocking it this way or that way, depending on what it was. So as I mentioned, there's Gedolei Poskim that held as an Issa Daraisa. Why is it an Issa Daraisa? Because we know that there's Ein Disha Ela Begedulei Karka. In order to have a situation of Dosh, there has to be a Gedulei Karka. Just by the way, I asked one of the boys in yeshiva, I said, do me a favor, bring me a pack of baby wipes. I didn't open it. No one could say that I tried this one at home and I injected water into the, this is a regular Huggies normal thing. And I just told him, do me a favor, bring me a package. So he brought me down a package. I'm taking the top one, which they say is not so saturated in liquid. It's very interesting. The top one, this is mamish. It's a brand new packet. I haven't opened it. I'm going to move away. I'm going to move away just to make sure I don't make too much of a mess. I don't know how much you can see. I'm not sure. I hope this is going to work. I'm not sure. Okay. That got me approximately, if not more, a teaspoon of liquid that just came out. You try this one yourself. It's not chiddush what I just did. It's a double poshet. There's at least a teaspoon.
It's on perfectly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, I know there's a lot more to discuss. The surface, we'll try to get to it. But one by one, just to know, people don't even realize how much liquid is actually in there. And that's very interesting. If you fold up your baby wipe and do that, you will see that at least, if not more, and this is from the top one. If I go to the bottom of the package, I imagine I'll get even more. But from the top one, I get that. Now, what did I do? You learn the halachas. What's the metzias? So I spent a long time in a factory in Ashkelon. Now, there's a factory in Ashkelon which is owned by a Yid, from Yid, and he doesn't only own that factory, he owns many factories around the world. He has one, if I remember correctly, in Germany and another one in Kentucky. And he is, from information that I found out, the third and biggest base manufacturer of baby wipes in the world. Many of the big makes that you see, Kleenex and others, don't have their own factories. They're basically ordered by him. And he ships it to America, or he makes it in America. Like I said, he's got a factory in Kentucky. And a lot of the factories are made by him. A lot of the companies that you buy are made by him. So I figured this is the best way to find out. And I went over to Ashkelon, took the trip to Ashkelon. I was there for quite a number of hours, a few times. And I sat down with some of the technicians. I went down to the factory floor. I want to explain to me how it's made, the materials they use, what's the scientific understanding of a baby wipe. Give it all to me. I had to explain to them where I was coming from, even though if they were religious, but maybe they didn't understand. We gave a little shit to everyone over there, what dosh is, how does it work? Why did I go there? Two reasons. Number one, to understand how they make baby wipes, because as I said, they don't just make one type, they make about 30 different types of baby wipes that are around the world. So they definitely have a very good hand in understanding what baby wipes are made from. I also went there with another intention, and that was I wanted to basically make my own baby wipe. And I still do. In fact, I have over here one of the packages that we did a test run one of the times I was there, because I wanted to produce my own baby wipe for Shabbos that would be mutter l'kulei alma. I didn't want a machlokes. I didn't want anyone in the Rav in the world to be cholik and say it's osa. I wanted a baby wipe that's the kulei alma, and I believe it's one of the biggest zikr rabbin that we can do in Shabbos. And be'ezus Hashem, if the Rebbeinu Hashem gives me time and a little bit of money, so I will be'ezus Hashem get to it. But in the meantime, we're dealing with the yeshiva. But upon him, they explained to me like this. There are basically two materials that you use. It's impossible for me to show you on a screen what the difference between them are, but we rip this off the machine. One is a gedule karka and one is a non-gedule karka. One is softer and one is a little bit rougher. And you don't feel a major difference, but it's like this. The gedule karka, the cotton, it's a real beautiful, very soft material, and that is used in baby wipes. The non-gedule karka is also used. So one of the tainas that people have is, most of our baby wipes are not gedule karka. Number one, that is basically not true. And as they told me, and they make over 30 types of baby wipes that are all over America, all over the world. And they said it's almost impossible to make a baby wipe that is only from non-gedule karka materials. The reason for that is that it won't work softly in the machines. It doesn't. You need to have a combination. The better the baby wipe, the more choshev, the more expensive, the softer it is, the more gedule karka it has. I cannot tell you every make how much percentage it has, because it does change according to time and according to company. But the one thing they told me is the more expensive, the better ones you have, the more gedule karka it has in it. But even the cheaper ones have gedule karka, which means we're dealing with most of the cases of baby wipes that we have are all going to have gedule karka. So you've got a baby wipe that has gedule karka in it. You've got a liquid that's absorbed within the gedule karka. You're going to say, I don't want it, I do want it. It comes out, and I use that liquid. Okay, so there was a taina, which was mentioned already, which was, what about the taina that it is above, meaning it's resting above? So I'll be honest, I don't really understand the taina. I don't really understand the metzias. I'm not going to do it now because I don't think you're going to see it clearly, but imagine if you took a baby wipe, held the baby wipe just by the corner, put it down on the table. Just put it down. Any baby wipe. This is Huggies. It's a decent make. Put it down on the table in a regular way, and then take a regular Kleenex, normal dry tissue, rest it on top. You could leave it there for a while. I'm not going to do it now because you're not going to be able to see it, but you could do this one at home. Again, take a baby wipe. I took one. It's a brand new, fresh package. Hasn't been dried out. It's Huggies. It's a decent make. It's not a cheap one or whatever it is. And I've just done this now, just for the sake, just to look at it as I'm talking to you. And as of now, I'm resting this paper on the top. Now, Kleenex paper is very, very thin. It's very versatile. It can absorb almost anything. You put it down onto a table with a few specks of water, and it will automatically absorb everything in there, and half of the tissue will become wet. You put it on a baby wipe, and again, try this one yourself. I'll put it down on a flat surface because I think that's probably better than in my hand. And again, do it yourself. You will find little, if any, liquid that goes onto that tissue. Now, I confirm this with technicians. These are technicians. You should understand. These people, by the way, were very excited because these are people that studied years and years of university, of all sorts of interesting things. I don't even know what you call them, of how these things work. And no one really cares. You're in the factory and off you go do it. And here's somebody who actually wants to figure out what they're learning and what they're doing. So they're all excited to explain it to me. They told me there is no question that there is a lot of liquid absorbed. Is there a little bit on the outside? Okay, maybe, of course, your hands are going to get a little bit wet. But they told me that most baby wipes are made of a material that are so sensitive to touch that the moment you touch them, they become wet. In other words, that is squeezing them. That is a type of squeezing. I know there's a svara out there. Maybe you'll hear it soon. Maybe you have heard it. That's not called squeezing. It's not with the Torah acid. I don't know what that means personally. I went to the sugya. I spoke it over with Gedolim. I don't know what that exactly means. That's not called skita. But one thing I see with my own eyes is that when I put a tissue on top of the baby wipe, I don't see a tremendous amount of liquid resting on the top. And I will tell you this from a personal level as well. One of the baby wipes that I'm trying to develop, of which we did 2 test runs, and we sent them out for examples, and we scrapped it because we had to start a new plan, was we tried to find. At first, what we tried to do is we tried to find a baby wipe that would be wet, which basically means it has to be wet of some kind, because otherwise you might as well use dry tissue. But upon touching, upon contact, it dries up immediately. And therefore, there's no real schita there. Even that is, a shaila, whether that's really true, we'll all want to be masking to that, but that didn't even work. What I want to do is find a material that doesn't absorb, and therefore the liquid is fully on the top. If it's fully on the top, then nobody can argue because there is no skita, because nothing goes in. But at the moment, we're having trouble with that. Why? Because the liquid is absorbed inside the baby wipe, and it's not resting on the top. And again, I challenge you to even take a microscope and see if that's true, whether or not you can find anything, even a tiny bit of mashu, and maybe a tiny bit you'll get. But is that called, that you've got roiv of the liquid on the top, that when you squeeze it, I'm not interested in that which is absorbed because I've got enough on the top to wipe the baby? Anyone that they use this on his children knows that you need a nice amount of liquid. You cannot use a small amount. You need a nice amount of liquid to clean off the baby or to clean the dirt of a table or whatever you're using it for. If that's true, it's very hard to say that most of what you're using is on the surface. There's a small amount that's absorbed inside, and then I don't care about. That's not true. That's number one. So we have a situation where it's gedulei karka. We have another situation that it's mischaven. It's for sure nichalei. You for sure want it to happen, because why'd you get a baby wipe as opposed to a dry piece of paper? Another thing, holech li'ibud, right? It's a swear that people say. It's not holech li'ibud. Holech li'ibud means the case of the Shulchan Aruch, where I squeeze in the tap and it goes on the floor and nobody uses the wine. But over here, I'm using the liquid, what for? Not to drink. I don't need it to drink. I need it to wipe off the baby. And that's exactly what I used it for. You cannot tie it, it's not a psik reisha, even to use softly. What does that mean? They asked Rav Avadia in Yabi Omer, maybe I'll use it softly. And he said, what does that mean? How do you could tell, the Chazon Ish has a lashon in Hilchos Bishul, where he writes, you cannot give the Torah to people and say, here, do whatever you want with it. Oh yeah, you could use this, but only use it in a way where you don't push hard. What does that mean? It's a very, very hard getter for a person to say. I've heard a svara that people use that it's the tzorech hakotten. It's the tzorech hachoila. It's not the tzorech hakotten, it's the tzorech haparent. right? Because at the end of the day, your child could use it very well. Your child could be cleaned very well. Baruch Hashem, none of my children had baby wipes ever on them from the day number one. And Baruch Hashem, they're okay, they're healthy, they're gewaldig, and it's not the tzorech HaKohen, it's the tzorech HaParent. So therefore, it's very hard to say that's first. So I have a psik reisha, I have a nichale, I have a gedule karka, I have a regular situation of schitas begodim. It's very hard to get out of it. I saw that in America, I've been to America, Baruch Hashem, many times, and I saw in America that they have a baby wipe. I don't know if I'm going to mention it. I don't want to, whatever. There's a baby wipe out there that is written on it, mutter to use on Shabbos. They actually recently brought it to Eretz Yisrael. I can't tell you how many questions and phone calls I got when it came into the country. Can we not? I'm not going to say what it is, but I originally saw it advertised in one of these newspapers. I saw it first in 2008, right? So it's a while back. And what I did was, it said you're allowed to use the baby wipes on Shabbos, and it even brought the hechsha, which it sort of like put on in a way that you can't really see it, but like they sort of like attached it onto the advertisement to show, look, yes, you're absolutely allowed. There's a HaRav in America, a big godel that says you're allowed to use it. Beautiful. So what did I do? That's not good enough for me. What did I do? I called up the magazine and I said, could you send me the number of the people that make the baby wipes? So they did. I called them up and I told me, could you send me the actual hechsher? I know you have it on your advertisement, but you don't see that much from there. I want to see the whole thing. And it's a whole letter, which you cannot read really from the advertisement, and I can't believe anybody would. And he writes a few lines in there, which are bold and in underline, which the magazine or the package, which I have in front of me right now, which I don't want to put on the screen just in case, I don't want to hurt anyone, but it was written in Tovshin Samach Zayin, and it says over there clearly that you have to use a few together, and you have to not press hard, and all sorts of tanoim that it brings on a baby wipe that says, and I'm looking at the baby wipe now, mutter l'shtamesh b'Shabbos. Doesn't say how, doesn't say how to do it. You're allowed to use it on Shabbos. So I don't know what that means. I don't understand that, whatever that is, how you could say such a thing. I know, I'll tell you one thing before we go on. At the end of the day, and I've said this many times as well, you know, we talked about Daled Minim. Last time we met, we were talking about Daled Minim. Daled Minim is a very choshev sugya. And, you know, when it comes to Esrog, we'll talk about Esrog. Esrog is people are very attached to their Esrogim. People spend a lot of time, a lot of money on buying a beautiful Esrog. Just imagine for a moment, you took an Esrog, and it's a beautiful Esrog. It's a gorgeous Esrog. You want to use it. You take it to many of the Gedolei HaPoskim, and the Gedolei HaPoskim say, I'm sorry, there's a problem with the Esrog. There's a problem with the Esrog. You can't use it. It's not kosher. You cannot use it. And you're very upset. It's a beautiful Esrog. Nobody even saw that little flaw in it. So you take it to one or two, take it to a few more, and they say it's okay. Would you be happy to use such an Esrog? Would you feel good on the first day of the if this is your Rav who you go with and everything? I hear. But if he's not your Rav, stop. Oh, that Rav I heard. Okay, so I'm going to run into him. Yeah, Kavaldik Esrog. 10 Gedolei Ador just puzzled it, said it's not good. How good are you going to feel by shaking that Esrog? You're not going to feel that good. You're possibly, if you machshav the mitzvah dalamini, you're possibly going to go to somebody else and say, do me a favor, can I borrow your Esrog just in case? Here you have a halacha, which in Ochanami, there are Gedolim, there are Rabbanim that say it's kosher. But if you look at the overwhelming list of Gedolei Hador, again, Minchas Yitzchak, Debetzin HaRav, I'm not even quoting Israelis, the Debetzin HaRav and Ben Moshe, Darren Fisher, Rav Elashev, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Shevet HaLevi, Rav Scheinberg, Rav Mr. Kavelich, Shevet HaKahossi, and as I mentioned as well, Rav Vosner, Rav Elashev, Mr. Kavelich, Rav Shlomo Zalman, which again is, okay, it's a shaila, what he held, what he didn't held, whatever his Rabbi Zil told me very clearly, and it absolutely does not work, and you cannot use it. Bechlal, there's a sefer as I mentioned, it's called Mincha Shabbos. Mincha Shabbos brings a letter from Rav Shmuel Orbach, who has a letter from his father, Rav Shlomo Zalman, that clearly says that baby wipes also. Rav Scheinberg held that way. Rav Moshe, again, I don't know. Rav Moshe doesn't talk about baby wipes. Someone will say he meant baby wipes, he didn't mean baby wipes, whatever it may be. But we have over here a halacha, which again, if you think about it, you learn the sugya. You have a simple situation of schitas begodim, where you've got liquid that you're interested in coming out. If the straw comes out, to say that it's resting on the top, I don't know what that means, because I've tried it, and you can all try it to see if it really happens. I don't personally, I've tried it many, many times. I haven't seen it. I showed you how much liquid comes out when you squeeze it. And by the way, that's almost the level of how much you're squeezing on the baby or on the table. It's got gedule karka in it. I don't see any reason. So what's the eitzah? The Eitzah would be just like Rav Sheinberg wrote in the Tshuva. Rav Sheinberg said, squeeze it out, that it's mostly out. There's a Ramah in Hilchos Yom Kippur Tokvei Shud Gimel Sites that says that as long as it's not Tefeich HaManas Tatzviyah, then it's okay. So in the Erev Shabbos, you squeeze it out, you open the package in a way that it's not so wet, then you're okay. Or you use tissues. I was in Monsey. I was giving a Shabbaton to a certain community in Monsey, and it was a beautiful Shabbos. And one guy was very excited because he knew that I'd given a share on what I call the World War on baby wipes, and he was very excited to show me that he came up with a spray. I don't know what it's called. It's a special spray that has the baby wipe liquid inside it. You spray it on the baby, use tissues, or you can even use dried out baby wipes, and that is gewaldig and no problem whatsoever. There is a baby wipe out there that's got oil in it. It actually comes from Vienna. I tried once to bring it in. I took it to Rabbi Zul Orbach. Rabbi Zul Orbach was not happy with it. I took it to Rabbi Shammai Gross. He was a bit more makel on it because the oil floats to the top, and therefore you could be more makel. But again, it's very hard to get it. They did try to ship it all over America, but it's almost impossible to get. That's only in Vienna, and even that is already a machlokas haposkim. You're dealing with something on Shabbos which is a machlokas haposkim. You know, we spend so much time on our mitzvahs, our matzahs on Pesach, our esrog on Sukkot, on many times throughout the year. Here we have something which is a machlokas. I don't understand why. You're right, and Chas v'Shalom, the Gedolim and Rabbanim, who am I to talk about them and talk, to say that I saw it differently to them. These are Gedolei Olam, these are Tzaddikim. I'm just poshut. Me is just saying, after learning the sugya, and I have to tell you, I now have a yeshiva, but for a number of years I had a kollel. We went through the sugya numerous times with people in the kollel who mamish could learn. These guys went through every vision backwards and forwards. And the beginning, they're like, no, we're going to come out that it's mutter. I don't remember any of them coming out that it's mutter. You want to say there's a heta, there's a limud schos. I'll give you an example. In my house, baby wipes are muktzah. Like nobody even picks up the package. I remember I was in Chutzlaritz once, and somebody knocked on the door. And one of my kids, they were young, I don't remember, maybe 8, 9 years old, maybe even 7, onto the door. And they said, oh, could we please borrow a packet of baby wipes? And they're like, no, in this house we keep Shabbos. Like we understood, and to Poshet Azach in Eretz Yisrael, I'm not saying everybody does this way, but I know even in America a lot of people do as well, personally, because I've spoken about this many times, and people call me, people send me emails. So I know, a lot of people can't take this halacha, it's too difficult. I have to find its mutter, but to find a Rav that you don't even hold of, that's not your Rav, that's not your Rebbe, because he holds its mutter, you have to know. There's a shach in Klolei HaPsak in Yeridea that says you can't just pick and choose. We know this from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, B'Shama B'Silo. You can't just choose whatever you want. Oh, this is a convenient one, so I'm going to go to a Rav that I never heard of, or I did, but I never asked him a Shaila, I've never Shaykhist him, but I'm going to ask him this Shaila, or I'm going to trust him on this because he's a Choshev Rav. Could be, 100%. But if your Rav doesn't hold that way, or if you went to the Sugi and you don't see a major heta, then it's almost asa for you person to be making in that way. So that pretty much, I think, sums up at least what I wanted to say, but I did want to leave a little bit of time for some questions that the Olam may have based on anything that I said to make it clear. But as far as I'm concerned, and we have a joke in the yeshiva over here that on the application form of the yeshiva we write, do you use baby wipes? If you write yes, you're not automatically not accepted into the yeshiva. We keep Shabbos over here. But it's a little bit of a joke, but it's true. I try to machanech the boys as well that, yes, there are rabbanim choshev, way more choshev than I can ever be. But at the end of the day, I've gone through the sugya. I had a lot of gedolei poskim who say like me, and therefore, not only that, look at the mitzvahs. You tell me why it should be mutter. You give me the lumdus why it should be mutter. I'm happy to discuss it. I'm happy to be open and fakir. If I can find a way to make a kosher baby wipe that will be mutter l'kulei alma, that every rav in the world will give a stempel saying it's 100% mutter l'chatchela halavai. Halavai, I could do such a thing, but I do want to leave some time for questions if anybody has anything that they wanted to ask.
Okay, so let's start with, before we get to the Rav's new hamsa on baby wipes and what you're going to do, is there, according to the das and Mekilim or the neutral das, is there a way that you can use it, and when you squeeze it, it should go, even assuming that you are getting the water out, and you gave us a very telling demonstration, is there a way to squeeze it in such a way that would help by certainly making it go le'ibud so that you're not using the water, and therefore that would make the schita head? Is there a way to make that easier with das neutrally?
So the only way that would work is to use the spray the baby, and then use the baby wipe. Because when you do that, anything that comes out, I don't need. Why don't I need it? Because I have enough spray on the baby. or on the table or whatever it is. And therefore I don't need that which comes out. But the taina that there's enough on the surface and whatever comes out I don't really need, I personally, again, I don't understand where that comes from because I don't see there being enough, and I've tried it with many different types, that there being enough on there to wipe the baby in a way that I don't need the liquid that's absorbed inside. So if you spray the baby first, and if forget, by the way, it's more convenient because it gets it off much quicker, then that would definitely be a heter according to maybe even the Oshrim. It could be many of the Oshrim would be masking to that all of a sudden, yes, I've done schita, but it's hoylech li'ib, but it's almost like squeezing schita cyrus in the mikvah. Person's in the mikvah, you're allowed to squeeze your payas, even though inside the water you're going to be doing schita, but it's loinika. I don't need it, I don't want it, and therefore it's okay. Could be that would be the same gather. It could even be according to the Oshrim, you'd be allowed to do that.
Okay. There seems to be, again, I don't want to go into Matthias questions, but there seems to be pretty strong evidence. The Rav said he asked Shmuel and others, some Zalman assert. Again, we're talking here halacha and lamdus and svaris and not Matthias's, but as you know, in the Shmir Shabbos L'chasa, there is an explicit footnote, and both Rav Neuwirth and Rav Machem L'chaim, Rav Devensal, claim otherwise. Rav Shlomo Zalman was mat. Where is there in the writings of Rav Shlomo Zalman something that would give us an idea of what he held?
Oh, that's a hard one. In Minchas Shlomo, nothing that I'm aware of. Everything in the Shmir Shabbos is Rav Shlomo Zalman. I mean, especially if there's a horror there, or everything is Rav Shlomo Zalman. And he was originally maker. There was no question. It was hoylech li'ibud. It wasn't absorbed inside. It wasn't a ma'aser schita. All the reason that the Shmir Shabbos brings. But again, there's a sefer Minchas Shabbos from Rav Leifer, and he brings this. You can find on Oitzah Chochma, by the way. This sefer is on Oitzah Chochma called Minchas Shabbos from Rav Leifer, Rav Meir ben Chaim Alta. And he brings, where is it? I don't know exactly which page it is, but he brings a letter that Rav Shmuel had from Rav Shlomo Zalman, who says that Rav Shlomo Zalman asked it.
He actually was chayzer from what he said, but on the basis of new Metzias, well, that's how he felt all the way at the beginning. Because in the Miluyim to the Shmir Shabbos, he brings a svara, which he says that the schita, the mayim is haylach li'ibud, which is ein my mamish, and that is, he says, efshar, that's not daim b'chlal to mafarik, where there has to be something nishar be'en. So that's the svara here, which seems that there's nothing nishar be'en. Does that make sense?
What does that mean? There's nothing nishar be'en. The baby is wet.
Baby.
Anyone that changed the baby, anyone that changed the diaper, will know that if you use a baby wipe in the normal way, the baby is wet. There is no question about it. That's why in the old days,
the excrement gets wet. You don't want the baby to get wet. You just
don't
want
it to, but it's there. If you take it and wipe it on a wooden table, the table is going to be shiny with liquid. It's not pshat. There's no liquid that comes out. I just squeezed it for you. You saw what liquid comes out. Take it on a simple wooden, nice study table and wipe it. You'll see it's definitely tevech manas latzviach. It for sure is. Tevech manas latzviach is you take a finger, wet your next finger. Try it. It's very simple on a wooden table and a clear, not a shiny wooden table with a polish on it. It's very wet. And it wets your finger and it wets the other finger as well. So it leaves something there. We have to remember that in the olden baby wipes were not like they are nowadays. They're not as fancy and as choshev and as advanced as the way they make the woven materials, because everything is advanced. And the baby wipes we have are just as advanced as everything else. And therefore, it's very hard to take a psak, even from Rav Moshe, unless Rav Moshe was talking about something else, and say we could use that for baby wipes when things have changed from when Rav Moshe had a baby wipe, even though he wasn't talking about baby wipes, to what we have nowadays. That's the problem. Whereas the Gedolim who talk explicitly about baby wipes, whether it's Rav Elyashiv or Rav Ozna, the Minchas Yitzchak, and others, were talking about baby wipes and they all answered it. So, to come along and say we have a malchokes with Rav Shlomo Zalman, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, I don't know. I don't know. Israel told me clearly that he was chayzer and he was machmeh. That's what Israel told me. I can't, more than that, I can't tell you. But the shaila is why the olim, are looking for every heta when, well, we have good olim. You're right. We have to know what to do. Everyone has to have their rov, and the rov has to paskin for them what they have to do. If their rov tells them it's more beautiful, their rov. But not, I found somebody, that's what I found over here. The shkop over here is, as long as I found somebody that said it's okay, so then I can be mekel. That's the shkop, which personally I just feel is something that, chaval. Maybe it's in Mefurish Allah, it's in Shulchan Aruch almost. And the Metzias doesn't really tell us otherwise. I'm trying to figure out why the Metzias is different, that everyone's saying, no, our Bebab's not that way.
Okay, so I'll just conclude with a ha'ara on the ground, and maybe the Olam will disagree with me, but Nagu, just as the Mechaber says, Nagu heter b'davar, and you explained that certainly is a b'diavad sheb'diavad. Olam Nagu heter b'davar here in America. Part of it is because they took on this possible heter of not squeezing it hard, this possible heter of the difference in lachos between the top ones and the bottom ones, and it's davar shemischaven, and it's not a psik reisha. This is not a psik reisha. It's a Matthias question. I've never, or rarely, I'm not an expert on Shabbos, but rarely there seemed to be such a machlekes Matthias. You squeezed it and the water came out. And the other paiskim who are mater today, B'ksav, will continuously claim that the water, I can read you the lashon, that the water doesn't come out, and even though there's a kamlas nikeris of noizlim, it's nevertheless similar to a matlis, which has no schita, and the original svara of the Shev Levi. So that's the and I will tell you, except for the Bnei Torah who really know Shabbos, the Olam is matter here, and I think this ilu hadvarim between Eretz Yisrael and America. And I'm wondering how the American boys who are the younger light who lived here in America and then watch their parents use it on them, what happens when they get to Rehov Sorotzkin. So
I think it's like everything else. I've been Baruch Hashem, I've been teaching for quite a number of years, both in koilel guys and to Bochum, and I find this with many halachas. Oh, we didn't know that was Asa. We're doing a Mir Lakim now with the boys, and they had no really. What do you mean? I see people asking Goyim the whole time, and my parents do it, and this one does it, and that one does it. But what do you mean? It's absolutely Asa. Oh, I didn't know that. Baruch Hashem, I came to Yeshiva, I came to a koilel, whatever it is. So I don't see anything different to that. People just
why is
the
question we had here today, which why the fact that it goes onto the tzaya, why is that not automatically ayuch ibud, and why is the Rav saying that the water is left in the baby and that therefore the baby was with the siyapa? The water is
no, it's not that the baby. No, the hoylech leibud is not because the baby has liquid. Hoylech leibud means like the Shulchan Aruch told us over here, and that is that when I put the handle in and out, the wine, which I normally would have liked to use, is going on the ground, which in those days was earth, and nobody's looking at it, no one's drinking it, no one's using it. That's called hoylech leibud. Hoylech leibud means it's gone. We saw the Baschitas Paris as well, the same thing as well, the famous Rabbeinu Hananel. This hoylech leibud means no one's using it, no one's touching it, no one's interested in it. Over here, to say the water is hoylech leibud, but I'm using it to get the excrement off. I'm using the liquid. That liquid is basically taking off the dirt from the baby. That is what it nothing to do with the baby getting wet. Without that, the
shmata is taking it off. It's just easier to get it off with a damp shmata as opposed to a dry shmata.
Because of the liquid.
I understand. So that's good for the shaila. How much is it to mix the liquid? And the Rav's telling me that there's no heter of hilchos here at all. That's what you're telling me. Because
100%. If you use a regular tissue without any liquid help whatsoever, no spray, someone will find it very, very difficult to clean the baby. When you use a baby wipe, all of a sudden it almost like slides off. That means you're utilizing the liquid that comes out. Without it, it wouldn't work. And that even if it's 80%, no, let's say that the tissue is doing 20%, 30%. But at least it's doing 60, 70, at least that, I would think more. But you could time it, maybe it's doing only 60, 70%. Say that. So 60%, 70% of the liquid's coming out is schita that you're using. It's mischaven, because I want it to come out. Otherwise, why do you use a baby wipe and not a regular tissue? You can't, I don't know how you can argue that it's not a situation. You could just see it in front of your eyes when you put it on the table. And it's not halach libud, and it's gedule karga. It's got every mile of a regular schita spegodim. I don't know what to say.
You got it? I just want to ask your existing eitzah of squeezing out before Shabbos. What does that mean? I have to put tissues on each side of it, take all the dampness out. Now it's a regular tissue. So why am I using it? What's the point of your Eitzah?
The main point of the Eitzah that people say, I've asked this many times. The main point of the Eitzah is a tissue often tears. So when you use it, it tears, and because it tears, it's not geschmack. Whereas a baby wipe is much more stark, and also it's softer for the baby. But for the liquid, you're right, you're not going to gain anything clappy the liquid shaboy. That's that, unless you say that the small amount that comes out is not tefech amanas not tfiach, then it just helps a little bit to agitate to get rid of the dirt that's there. Okay, that could be, but it's not the main. You could leave it out to dry. Just take a few things out before Shabbos, leave it out to dry, and they could do it that way. And then if you use the spray, it's even better.
Okay, finally, without revealing any trade secrets, and the Chavi Hashir here will undertake to buy from you in your first run your the ones which really will come with a video of this year and a real tuva on it. Could you explain to us a little bit? The elders really wants to know, how is your baby wipe going to work? Give us the basic principle.
I can't tell you 100%. I kind of have left it for a while. But the original idea, as I said, was to make it in a way that was as it exited the tissue, it almost dried up almost instantly. So it was there long enough to get rid of but it almost disappeared into nothing. Now there is a het of the samsofa by bishul. That bishul that automatically evaporates to nothing is not called bishul, and then you could say it's not tefech. I didn't like it because that's not the kol elma. I don't want to make a baby wipe that's going to be any shaila bichlal with any rov in the world. It's got to be lachatchila. So the only way to do it, and we are still searching, is to find a material that does not absorb, but yet the liquid could cling to that material, will be soft enough to wipe on the baby, because that's obviously what we need it for. So that basically there is no schita involved. It's like taking a piece of plastic that's wet and wiping the baby. Everyone will agree that's fine. Plastic doesn't really absorb. Even Rav Moshe talks about in Tshuva. And therefore that would be how I would do it. We got stuck looking for the material, and then I got a little bit busy with yeshiva, and then that was the end of that. But that would be the idea, to find a material that does not absorb bichalal, have it saturated in liquid, which is literally on the surface, because as they told me in the company, and again, these are technicians that have worked years on this, you will not find a material that the liquid does not absorb. And that's what they're telling me. So that's what they're telling me. These are people who've been working in this for years, that every material will absorb and will then therefore give out. So then it doesn't exist there to be a baby wipe that will be mutter to use, because they will automatically absorb and then automatically be skeeted out when you squeeze it. So that's the only way I could do it. Mitzvah Hashem, halavai.